Hello, everybody. Josh Brown here, back for another great episode on Franchise Euphoria. Well, today's episode is brought to you by IndieFranchiseLaw.com, a leading resource in the franchise space to help you if you're considering buying a franchise, turning your business into a franchise, or growing your business through a licensing or franchise structure. So go on, check it out, IndieFranchiseLaw.com. I think you'll find a lot of valuable and free information as you continue to kind of weigh franchising and licensing and the growth of your business. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode. On today's episode of Franchise Euphoria, I'm thrilled to have on Jennifer Lemke of the Weed Man franchise. And no, it's not a cannabis concept. It's a old school weed prevention concept, as in preventing weeds from growing in your lawn. And I was really amazed in this episode to learn about the success that Jennifer and her team have had with the Weed Man franchise concept. Started in Canada and then expanded to the US, where she has led a team and growing the U.S. concept. I think you'll find that she has a tremendous amount of experience, both on the franchisee side and the franchisor side. And you'll learn how being a franchisee has contributed so much to her success as a franchisor. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this interview with Jennifer Lemke. Hello, Jennifer. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on. You're the CEO of the Weed Man franchise, not to be confused with, I just had somebody on from a cannabis franchise, but this is weed from the perspective of lawn care, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
In this day and age, it's probably not the first time somebody said that to you.
No, in fact, I got an investment email this morning precisely on that. I laughed. So hopefully that we won't have that again.
Well, so I always love to have on franchises that have been around for a little bit. And obviously, the Weed Man franchise has been around for quite some time, and you've got over 300 franchisees. And so there's been a lot of growth and a lot of success. But before we dive into, some of those details, tell me a little bit about yourself and sort of how you got involved with the franchise.
Yeah, my dad bought his first franchise when I was 16, and he started off in Hull, Quebec. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the geography here in Canada, but it's right across the river from our nation's capital. And he started there and did very, very well, expanded into the Montreal marketplace, bought another 7 territories there, and all in the time frame while I was going to school, and honestly had no real aspirations of joining the company. And he had approached, at the time, my fiance and I, and Chris and I decided to join Weed Man. And we actually started in the Ottawa franchise doing that. And we saw, really good growth. Our first 6 years, we acquired the existing franchise at about 250,000 in sales. And after acquiring it, after 6 years, we were hitting the $2 million mark. So that was very interesting and really gave me a really in-depth perspective of operations, what it took to gain a customer, lose a customer, and kind of everything in between. So that experience led us to, we had quite a bit of growth, and we had acquired other franchises all at the same time. And my dad, because of his background, he's a chemical engineer, really believed in creating systems, and especially training systems, to make sure we were standardized on what we were telling our employees. So at the time he approached, I guess that was in 96, he approached Des and Brenda Rice, the founders of Weed Man, to see if we could acquire the master franchise rights to the US. So we did that. And first couple of years, we were really, just writing the FTD and getting all kind of sorted out. We realized very quickly, if we're going to be successful in the US, we needed to get sub-franchise or Americans involved, which we did through a sub-franchise network. So that has served very, very well for us. So I joined Turf Holdings, the current master franchisor for the US, back in 2000, left Ottawa, and then went to the Toronto area and helped launch us in the US. And, when I first started, we had about $1 million of sales, and this past year we had 115 million in the US alone.
That's fantastic.
Some interesting things have transpired actually in the last 3 months. So actually, a little bit excited. It's hot off the presses. We actually acquired the Weed Man brand nationwide. Brenda decided to retire, so we actually own the entire brand for worldwide, and that just happened November 30th.
Wow, that's really exciting. It's interesting because a couple of things that you mentioned there. First of all, you started off as a franchisee in a different concept, right? A concept in Canada. And you said you took that when you bought it, it was at 250,000 in revenues. And then soon thereafter, or within the next year or two, you got it up over 2 million. What do you attribute to that kind of growth? That's a significant difference.
It was a lot of hard work. My husband and I, which is often very characteristic that we have inside of Weed Man and the franchise owners, a lot of couples have gotten involved. And primarily I took care of the sales, the marketing side, and the administration, and Chris took care of the technical side, making sure the work got done and delivered to the customer, and making sure that our retention rate stayed high. So the great thing about Weedman is that it's a recurring business model, recurring revenue business model. So every January, we don't start off fresh. About 80% of our customers renew year after year. So we're not building our database from scratch every year. So by renewing them, it allows us to really focus on the growth of the business. And that's where we shine as an organization is really with very controlled data management and looking at the different data sets of our customers and really focusing in on those data sets, on how we're going to market to them and how we're going to bring them on as customers. So it's very, very focused and deliberate growth. And that's what we've been able, that systemization of how we do things has been the success to the Weedman brand. It's just an absolutely amazing thing, Josh, to be at the annual conference and be a part of some of these families that have joined our bigger Weedman family and have really created wealth in doing this. It's such an exciting thing. And now you're seeing kids of owners coming in and joining the organization. And in fact, my kids are looking at wanting to join the organization. You can't have more fun than doing that, right?
No, that's exactly right. And I think one of the things that you mentioned as well is that you purchased the rights, the master franchise rights to the US, right? For Weedman initially. And so I think for those listening, I'll give just a quick sort of generic synopsis of what a master franchise is, but essentially you acquired the rights to then come to the US and help the franchisor grow throughout the US by basically acquiring the rights to the US territory. And my guess is you probably had to operate a certain number of franchises yourself, but then you were also charged with the responsibility to go out and find other people to become franchisees. Is that correct?
It is. And in fact, in the US, we didn't have any franchises that we were operating. We went straight into franchising. Sorry, that's not true. We did have one franchise just to test out some of the marketing systems that we had created. And then from that, we sold all of the through franchising. And our target, we had zero brand recognition when we went into the US. And the place where we did have some recognition was actually within our own industry. So when we first went to the US, that's what we targeted. We targeted leaders in our industry, meaning the landscaping world, and approached existing landscapers that may or may not have been offering lawn care as part of their portfolio, and got them to come into the system and either convert existing lawn care business over into Weedman or added on to their landscaping company. So that was our primary target when we went into the US.
And is it just the weeding part of it? In other words, so do you guys do other landscape services, or is it just purely focused on getting rid of the weeds in the landscaping or yard?
Yeah, we do fertilizer, weed control, aeration, seeding, anything to do with the maintenance of the lawn. We don't do lawn cutting. That's one thing we do not do, but we do the fertilizer, weed control. And we've just added on mosquito control services this year onto our portfolio. So that'll be an add on for this year.
Well, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. So talk about, because to me it's great to have somebody like yourself on who literally from the outset coming to the US, as an example, kind of starting from scratch in the US, building it out. You don't have any brand recognition, but you have a system, you have some sort of proprietary offering, and you have a desire obviously to infiltrate in the market. What did you find in terms of, as you were growing the franchise, was the thing that resonated with people the most in terms of people being interested in utilizing Weed Man? Because in franchising, it's always interesting to me, because you have these great concepts, these great businesses, and yet a lot of times a challenge that a franchisor will have, especially when they're just getting started, is really getting that initial inertia going, where they start to grow their franchise system. So how did you get that going?
You know, I think our experience in Canada, because in Canada, our group that owns the master rights in the US, we're franchisees in Canada. So when we're talking to prospective franchisees or people that are, looking at maybe converting their existing business, I grew up in the lawn care business. I really did. My dad added it when I was 16, but prior to that, our neighbor here in Toronto owned the Weed Man franchise. That's how we got involved. So I've been around it for most of my life. So it gives, I think, a sense of credibility of what we were able to accomplish in Canada. So in Canada, we are the largest multi-unit franchisee in Canada, and we're just in our system sales alone, we're over 20 million. So when you're sitting at the table with a prospective candidate looking at your opportunity, you know what you're talking about. You know how to make money in lawn care. You're able to roll out your systems. And my dad, being that kind of engineering mind of his, everything has been built around our business plan. And that's probably our biggest part of our secret sauce for us, is the business planning that we do with our franchisees. And it's a pretty robust, people think, whoa, lawn care, what is this, right? And this business plan that we have, every one of our systems, from our accounting to all of our marketing tracking, everything rolls from the business plan. So a lot of people say, oh, yeah, we do business planning, but for us, it's cultural. It's part of our DNA. So every single franchisee across the US, and now we're bringing that into Canada as well, to the rest of the franchisees, is this is where it starts. And from that, we build the tools for you to be able to empower your employees, but it flows through the business plan. So they are all part of it. We believe in what's called zero-based budgeting, which is really starting from scratch every year, which our industry has been known. And I think a lot of industries really work through incremental budgeting. I'm going to grow X amount, so I'm just going to increase my expenses by the same percentage, which that's not the way we do it. It allows us to have some in-depth conversations, even about a 0.05% on closing rates. And it also allows us to have all of the same language throughout. So we're all measuring exactly the same way, our top line and then our bottom line as well. So when you're showing this to people, our industry, I would say the landscaping industry, which is a lot more sophisticated than it used to be, it still lacks in some of these areas. So this is something that we're able to help future owners and business owners become even better business owners, to really go through the thought process and work on your business, just not in it all the time. Step back and took a real hard look. And then all of the systems that flow from that, we're able to look at historical information to help us build out algorithms. So if a franchisee says, I should have X amount of customers or decisions on a certain campaign by this date, we're able to tell them exactly if they're going to make it at the end of the year, unless they change, or if they continue down the same path, what they need to change to make their year-end budgets.
So Jennifer, obviously you guys have had tremendous success, expanding throughout the U.S., but certainly when you started out, that wasn't the case. You were starting anew. I mean, what are some of the things that you attribute to the success that you've been able to obtain in the United States?
Yeah, it's been good, primarily because, in Canada, we are the largest multi-unit franchisee. So when you're talking to a prospective candidate for franchise, It shows when you're talking to them. And we were doing our expansion through our sub-franchisors and onto our franchise network. But when we would get on, do discovery days or bring people into our head office and, talk to them, they understood that we really understood what we were talking about. I grew up in the lawn care industry. My dad bought his first franchise when I was 16. So it's been very, it's in my blood. So when you're talking to people, we're talking about the same type of language. And keep in mind, we really targeted people within our industry and, a lot of landscapers that were either struggling and adding lawn care to their current portfolio, or people that had thought about maybe adding lawn care but weren't really quite sure. And we were just a perfect fit for them, and they could see the systems that we were bringing to the table were a lot of the systems that they were lacking in their own business. So it was just a real great fit to be able to meet with them, show them some of our systems that we've built, and they could see right away that we were credible in what we were saying. So I think that was really what has brought us to the next level.
So, what type of franchisee are you guys looking for? I mean, as you continue to grow this brand, I mean, who's a typical type of operator for the Weed Man franchise?
That's a great question. So, primarily when we first started, because we didn't have brand recognition, we really went after people in our industry. We crossed over into the pest control industry as well, and also we've done very well with golf course superintendents. It's kind of the same industry, and what they all lacked was the systems, and that's something we brought to the table. So they understood kind of how to do the business, and we had the systems to help support them. So things are now changing where we're seeing more and more people outside the industry joining or looking at our organization. It's been interesting because not only do we have that happening, and a lot of it is through our existing network. We've had customers that have reached out to us now and wanting to look at the franchise system. We've had relatives of existing franchises or friends of existing franchises. So, you know how you kind of go through that next wave. But our biggest expansion right now has been through our current network. And we've developed a program which we call the multi-unit program. And we have a training program for existing employees that go through the training program. And then either through themselves and family backing or through the current ownership, will open up another franchise and become partners with the current owners of where they were working before. So it's been a huge advantage for us to have systemized current employees. How can you grow inside the system and become owners yourself? We have some great stories in our system right now. We have a door knocker that started with us a few years back, and now with his help with his parents, is now own his own franchise, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. So there's stories like that. We've got people that have come in as, sales managers and now have gone on to open their own branch with the help of existing ownership. So it's been really kind of cool to see that.
Oh, that's really cool. It's as if you were reading my mind, because my next thought and question was going to be around multi-unit ownership, because I've been around the franchise space long enough and in my own, franchise legal practice. And this type of franchise just seems like a perfect opportunity for multi-unit ownership. Somebody who's come in, who's done well in a territory, and maybe wants to look at buying contiguous territories if they're available, or going even beyond that. So that was sort of at the top of my mind of thinking, and then you had mentioned it. So it sounds like that's the way that the franchise is going.
Yeah, I think it's a trend in the franchising world, this multi-unit, for sure, multi-brand even, to help grow the top line. For us, because we've lived it in Canada through our operations, if you're not growing and creating opportunities for your employees, they leave. Your A players leave because, being a technician, although a great job, but it's not a career, and you burn out. It's not something that, a lot of people can do. There are some, but not a lot of people can do for long term. So when you identify some key talent in your organization, you want to create a path for them to see a career inside the organization. And the only way to do that is to grow into these multi-units and be able to put them, as general managers. But further to that, we really believe in the owner operator philosophy. And that's what Weed Man was built on in Canada through Des and Brenda Rice. So we really felt that that was the model we wanted to present to our US franchisees, and they've really run with that. We have one group that started in Madison, Wisconsin, a father-son. They have brought on so many key talent, and they're knocking on the door. By the end of this year, they'll probably be between 14 and $15 million of system sales over about eight or nine branches. And they're very well connected in the University of Madison and have got most of their talent through that program, and have just brought in these superstars. And everywhere from Boise, Idaho through to Austin, Texas, they have branches, and it's just a really good model and so much fun to be a part of, to see these young people coming up through. So it adds so much energy to the system.
So, knowing what you know now, and sort of looking back on where you started, and we'll just focus obviously on the U.S. Expansion, because I know it goes earlier
Yeah.
than that. What's something that you wish you had known back then that you know now that may have made a difference? Maybe not in how you ultimately did things, because obviously it's worked out well, but for those out there listening who are maybe going through this journey and are on the earlier side of it, what's something that you wish you had known back then that you know now?
That's a good question. I always think my mindset is everything happens for a reason and it's part of your growth. So even the bad stuff, when it happens, you just got to think of it. It's all part of my growth. Uh, I don't feel like there's anything I can really put my finger on that we've done completely wrong. Have we done some missteps? For sure. But in the end, it's made us stronger. I think, what we've done well is we have been laser focused on the franchisee's success. And I think as franchisors, when you lose sight of creating that win-win situation, if you're only looking at the equation on how much money can I make out of this, what's the next private equity that's going to come in and look at me? When you lose sight of the franchisee's success, I think that's when you start to get yourself into trouble. And there are times where that can be easy. I can see it being easy to happen. And for me, just keep reminding myself their success is going to build my success, the company's success, my employees' success. So, I think that if you were to talk to any of our franchisees, they feel very, very strongly that we truly care about their success. We're ready to do 10-year business plans with them. We're ready to do renewal audits at any given time. We work day and night. We'll take calls anytime they want to, or text. So, although that would seem exhausting to most people, it's created this relationship of trust. And if any missteps have happened and was because of a lack of communication on our part, if we didn't explain something correctly, if we didn't illustrate what the win would be on the franchise side in anything that we roll out, then we got ourselves into trouble. And we typically had to step back and kind of go, okay, hold on a sec here. Let's revisit this, because if you're not feeling comfortable, we cannot move forward with this. And I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it's been truly a driving force. All of our sub-franchisors think the same way. We're fully aligned in really devoting ourselves to the success of the franchisee.
Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you or somebody at the company who wants to learn more about the Weed Man franchise, or wants to talk about different aspects of it, what's a good place for them to go?
We have a website, weedmanfranchise.com. So that would be a great spot to kind of learn more about us and what we offer. And we have, quite a bit of testimonials and videos online and kind of next steps. So that would be a good spot to start to do some research. And then short of that, just emailing myself, jennifer.lemcke at weedmanusa.com. And I would be happy to either direct or talk to whoever would be interested to learn more.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for coming on and sharing as you did. I really appreciate it. And I know people are going to get a lot out of it. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. And I look forward to maybe meeting you face to face.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Franchise Euphoria. If you enjoyed this episode or have enjoyed the podcast in general, I would really appreciate it if you could go to iTunes and leave me a rating and review. It really helps to get this podcast out to more and more people. So the easy way to do it is go to iTunes and in the search box, put in Franchise Euphoria. You will then see my cover art and you click on my smiling face that says Franchise Euphoria and then click on the link that says ratings and reviews. It's that simple, but boy, oh boy, does it mean the world to me when people leave ratings and reviews. And like I said, it really helps get the show out there. Once again, would love it if you would go to iTunes and leave a rating and review if you enjoyed this episode or other episodes of the show. And until the next time, happy franchising.